We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 42a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara mentioned the idea that ein safek motzi midei vada, a doubt cannot take away from something that is a certainty. And the Gemara is asking on that concept from the following brisa. The brisa says that there was an incident with a maidservant shel meitzik echad, of a certain violent person. Rashi says meitzik gavra alma, strong person, v'Yisrael havi, he was a Jewish person. Berimon, and this took place in Rimon, sheitila nefa labor, that she threw her miscarriage into a pit. Uva kohen v'heitzitz, and then a kohen came and he looked. Leida im zochrim nekeva, he leaned over to look whether it was a male or female that was thrown into the pit. Uba ma'isa lifnei chachamim, and the incident came before the chachamim v'tiaru, and they said that he should be considered pure, he wouldn't be considered tamei from this. Mivnei shechuldu vardulus metzuyin sham, because you have weasels over there, and they're going to drag away the nefil anyhow, and therefore you can assume that he is pure. And so the Gemara asks, V'hacha, but over here, devada hitila nefel, she certainly threw the miscarriage into the pit, and safek gereru, safek lo gereru, it's a doubt whether it was dragged away or not, because he's safek umotzi midei vada, and apparently the safek is coming and taking away from the vada. And the Gemara says, Lo tema hitila nefel labor, don't say that what the Brisa was talking about was where she threw a nefel into the bore, meaning a non-viable newborn, where we were certain that it was a nefel that was thrown into the bore. Even that was a safek. Ela ema, rather say hitila kimin nefel labor, she threw something that seemed like a nefel, it seemed like a miscarriage that she was throwing into the pit. But the Gemara asks on this suggestion, V'haleida im zochrim nekevu, but it says that he leaned over to see if it was a male or female. That implies that it certainly was a stillborn, it certainly was a nefel. Katani, again, that's what it says in the Brisa, and so therefore there doesn't seem to be any doubt in terms of whether she threw a nefel into the pit. And the Gemara says, no, hachi kamar, this is what the Brisa means to say. He was leaning over and looking leida to know, im ruach hipila im nefel hitila. Number one, was it a ruach? Was it just like a wind? Was it a nothing substance that was thrown in there? It wouldn't even be considered a nefel, or maybe she threw an actual nefel into the pit. V'im timtzalomar nefel hitila, and if you're going to say that she threw a nefel into the pit, so then leida im zachrim nekeva, he wanted to know whether it was male or female. And the Gemara continues with another answer. If you want, I could say that it's not an issue of safek and vadai. Kevan shechuldu vardulus mitzuyin sham. Since the weasel and the polecat are found over there, vadai geru, they certainly dragged away the nefel. It's a situation of certainty in terms of that as well, and therefore it's not a question on the concept of ein safek motzi midei vadai. And the Gemara continues and returns now to the Machlokas Amoraim from the previous Amud between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. The Machlokas was, if an idol breaks on its own, is that prohibited or permitted? Rabbi Yochanan says it's prohibited, and Reish Lakish said that it was permitted. According to Reish Lakish, we assume that the Oved Kochavim nullifies the Avodah Zara once he sees that it is so weak that it can't even protect itself, it breaks on its own. Therefore, he nullifies it as Avodah Zara. That's why Reish Lakish said it's permitted. And so the Gemara now continues. Eisvei, we have a question on Reish Lakish from our Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Matzah tavnes yad, tavnes regel, if you found a tavnes yad, a figure of a hand or a figure of a foot, hare elu asurin, these are prohibited, mimnei shakayotze bohen nevad, because things like this are generally worshipped. And so the Gemara asks, Amai, now why is it prohibited according to Reish Lakish? Hashavarim ninu, again, this is a situation of broken pieces. Even if it broke on its own, according to Reish Lakish, it should be permitted. And the Gemara answers, Hatirgam Shmuel, Shmuel already interpreted that part of the Mishnah. This was already earlier, that Shmuel said, Ba'omden al basisan, that this part of the Mishnah is talking where the hand or the foot is on some kind of a base, and so therefore it's clear that in fact it is being worshipped, and that's why it's prohibited, and it is not a question on Reish Lakish. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei, we have a question on Reish Lakish from the Mishnah coming up. The Mishnah says, Oved kochavim mevatel avodas kochavim shalo v'shal chaveiro, and Oved kochavim, an idol worshipper, is able to nullify his Avodah Zara and the Avodah Zara of his friend. V'Yisrael eino mevatel avodas kochavim shal Oved kochavim, but a Jew is not able to nullify the Avodah Zara of an Oved kochavim, of an idol worshipper. And so the Gemara asks on Reish Lakish, Amai, now why is that true? Tahave kavodas kochavim shenishtabra meila, let's say the Jew breaks the Avodah Zara of the Oved Kochavim, that should be no different than if the Avodah Zara broke on its own. And again, Reish Lakish said that if the Avodah Zara broke on its own, it's permitted. So when the Yisrael breaks the Avodah Zara, it should be permitted as well. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Abaya, Abaya says, Shepachsa, the case over here in the Mishnah is a very particular case. When it says the Jew is not able to be mevatel the Avodah Zara, it's not talking when he breaks the Avodah Zara, according to Reish Lakish, because if he breaks the Avodah Zara, that would be no different than if it breaks on its own, and it certainly would be batel. But over here we're talking where the Yisrael, he's pachsa, he just bends the Avodah Zara. We'll see Rashi in a moment how he defines pachsa, but again, he does something which doesn't break the Avodah Zara, it just deforms the Avodah Zara, and so therefore, in such a situation, the Yisrael is not able to nullify the Avodah Zara. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'chi pachsa may have it, but even if he just bends or deforms the Avodah Zara, what difference does that make? But we learned in the Mishnah, pachsa afal pi shelo chasra, let's say the Avodah Zara is bent, it's deformed, even though the person doesn't remove any pieces of the Avodah Zara, it's not broken in any way, batla, that also is a nullification of the Avodah Zara, and so that really should not make any difference. There really is no difference between breaking the Avodah Zara or bending the Avodah Zara, etc. But the Gemara continues and answers, no, hani mili, when we say that pachsa is a nullification of the Avodah Zara, that's only true, the pachsa ovid kochavim, that's only true if it's the ovid kochavim, if it's the idolater who bent the Avodah Zara, who deformed the Avodah Zara. Aval pachsa Yisrael, but if it's the Jew who did that, lo batla, it actually would not be nullified. And again, we'll see Rashi on that in a moment. The Rav Amar and Rava says, Liolam ki pachsa Yisrael nami batla. Actually, if the Jew deformed the Avodah Zara, it also would be nullified. But the issue with the Jew doing it is as follows. Ella, rather, what the Mishnah is saying is gezeira, it's just a decree. The reason why a Jew doesn't nullify the Avodah Zara of an Ovid Kochavim is a decree as follows. Dilma magvala, we're afraid maybe the Jew is going to lift up the Avodah Zara and he'll acquire it. V'hadr mevatel law, and then he's going to go ahead and nullify it. And that's problematic. V'have avodas kochavim b'yad Yisrael, then it would be an Avodah Zara in the hands of a Jew, in the possession of a Jew. And the rule is, v'chal avodas kochavim b'yad Yisrael, anytime an Avodah Zara is in the hands of a Jew, eina betela liolam, it is never nullified. And so therefore that really is the reason why Yisrael is not mevatel avodas kochavim of an ovid kochavim, according to Rav. It has nothing to do with the fact that a Yisrael cannot nullify. Of course Yisrael is able to nullify, but there's a gezeira that maybe he'll acquire the Avodah Zara, and then nullification will become problematic. And Rashi explains, again, the Mishnah said, Shelo v'shel chaveiro, that when it comes to a non-Jew, he can be mevatel his Avodah Zara and the Avodah Zara of his friend. And Rashi says, Bein sheshneim ovdin liyar achas, the chiddush of the Mishnah over here is, whether they both serve the same Avodah Zara, whether these two idolaters serve the same Avodah Zara, Bein shezeh oved lepoor v'zel markulis, or whether this one serves poor, this one serves markulis, even if they serve different Avodah Zaras, one Oved Kochavim can nullify the Avodah Zara of his friend. And Rashi notes, this idea that Avodah Zara is mutter when it's nullified, nafka lekamon, that's learned out later on. Etc. Again, that's learned out later on. Shepachsa, what does it mean? Pachsa, Rashi explains, Hiko alay Yisrael bepatish. It means that the Jew hits it with a hammer. And so the image is already ruined. Avalo chisra klum, but none of it is missing. It's not broken in that way. So hilkach lo batal, therefore it's not nullified. But the Gemara says, but we learned in the Mishnah, by an idolater, pachsa afagav. By an idolater, we say that pachsa is enough for nullification. And so first the Gemara answered, Hani mili pachsa over kochavim. That's if the idolater is the one that bends or deforms the Avodah Zara. Degali daitu mevazu mevatel. He's showing that he despises it and he's nullifying it. Aval pachsa Yisrael lo. But if the Jew is the one that does that, so then it won't be nullified. Why? Delo dami la avodas kochavim shenishtabra meila. It's not similar to an Avodah Zara that broke on its own. Reish Lakish said again that an avodas kochavim that broke on its own is permitted, but pachsa Yisrael would not even reach that level. The Hazam Amar, because over there the Over Kochavim says, it's not able to save itself, so it can't save me, so he nullifies it. But over here, if you're just bending the Avodah Zara, so Kasavar Over Kochavim lo kapta Avodas Kochavim apechisa. The Over Kochavim will think, okay, the Avodah, this particular Avodah Zara doesn't care that it was bent. It wasn't broken or anything, so the Avodah Zara didn't protect itself because it wasn't such a big deal. And so therefore, again, according to that first answer of the Gemara, when the Jew goes ahead and he bends the Avodah Zara, so there's not that same reasoning that applies when it breaks on its own, and therefore it is not nullified. That was the first approach. And then the Gemara said, V'Rav Amar, and Rava says, Liolam ki pachsa Yisrael nami. Really, when a Jew also, if he's going to bend the Avodah Zara, have a bittul mi'alya, that would be a totally good nullification. And the reason why the Jew is not mevatel the Avodah Zara of the Ovid Kochavim is Ela Rabbanon Gazer. It's just the Rabbanon that make this gezeira. The chol bittul Yisrael ad bittul. They say a general decree. That when a Jew nullifies, it's not a nullification. There's a gezerah, maybe he'll lift it up, he'll acquire it when he lifts it up. Anything that's ownerless, like something that is found, that's acquired when you lift it up. And again, if the Jew owns it, ein la b'tei lo olamis, there is no nullification. U'te'una geniza, it actually requires that it geniza, it requires it be hidden away, buried. Kedi alfinon, beperek Rabbi Yishmael, in Perek Rabbi Yishmael coming up, mi v'sam baseiser, from the pasuk of v'sam baseiser. And the Gemara continues, Esvei, we have a question on Reish Lakish from the following brayso, Akum shehevi avonim min hamarkulis, if an idol worshipper brings stones from the markulis, the idol Mercury, v'chipa behen derachim v'tartios, and then he uses them to make roads or theaters, mutaros, those are permitted, it's considered that those were nullified. V'yisrael shehevi avonim min hamarkulis, but if the Jew is the one that brings these stones from the markulis, v'chipa behen derachim v'tartios, he uses them to cover the roads or build the theaters, asuros, they are prohibited, because again, the Jew is not able to nullify the Avodah Zara of the Ovid Kochavim. And so the Gemara asks the same question as above, Amai, why according to Reish Lakish is this going to be prohibited? To have a Avodah Kochavim shenishtabra me'eleh, it should be no worse than an Avodah Zara that broke on its own when the Jew breaks it. And the Gemara says, Hachanami kid Rava, here also you can give the same answer, we're following Rava, meaning to say when a Jew does it, so you have that gezerah, you have that decree, that again maybe the Jew will pick it up and acquire it, and then there would be a problem of nullification. And the Gemara continues, Asa, we have a question from another brayso, Ovid Kochavim shashifa avodas Kochavim letzarcho, if an Ovid Kochavim shaves down an Avodah Zara for his needs, so then he v'shipuyem mutarin, that's considered a nullification, the Avodah Zara, the shavings, they're all permitted. Letzarcho, now if he does it for the need of the Avodah Zara, he's trying to make it look nicer, so he asura, so the Avodah Zara is going to be prohibited, v'shipuyem mutarin, but the shavings are going to be permitted. V'Yisrael shashipa avodas Kochavim, but if a Jew is the one that shaves the Avodah Zara, bein letzarcho, it doesn't matter if he does it for his need, for its need, he v'shifuya asurin, it and the shavings are prohibited, because again there's no nullification by a Jew. And again the Gemara asks the same question, Amai, why according to Reish Lakish is it prohibited to have a avodas Kochavim shenishtabra me'eleh? It should be no different than an Avodah Zara that breaks on its own. According to Reish Lakish, it should be permitted. And the Gemara again answers, Hachanami kid Rava, here also just say like Rava, that when a Jew does it, there's a decree again, he might end up owning the Avodah Zara, and there's no nullification in that case. And the Gemara continues, Esvei, we have a question from the Mishnah coming up. Rabbi Yossi says, Shochek v'zora l'ruach omate layam, that a person, by an Avodah Zara, he can just grind it up, and he throws it out into the wind, he throws it to the sea, mete layam. Amrulo, they said to him, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yossi, that's not a solution for Avodah Zara. Afi nasa zevel, if you're going to throw it, if you're going to grind it up and throw it out into the wind, so it's going to be like fertilizer, there's going to be some benefit that you're going to get from the Avodah Zara. Uchsiv, and it's written, Lo yidbak b'yodchem u'menachem, you can't take anything from the chayrim. You can't get any benefit whatsoever. And so the Gemara again asks on Reish Lakish, Amai, why is it that it's problematic, but to have a kavodas kocham shenishtabra meila, again, if he's grinding it, destroying it all, it should be no different than an Avodah Zara that breaks on its own, and according to Reish Lakish, it should be permitted for that reason. And again, the Gemara answers, Hachanami kid Rava, here also, just to answer like Rava, that again, it's a gezerah that maybe the Jew's going to end up owning the Avodah Zara, and there'd be no situation of bittul. And the Gemara continues, Esvei, we have a question from the following brayso, Rabbi Yossi ben Yasyan Omer. Rabbi Yossi ben Yasyan says, Matzah tzuras derakon v'rosho chatach, if somebody finds an image of derakon, of a dragon, and its head is cut off, Rashi says in general those images were made for Avodah Zara. Safek ovid kochavim chatcho, safek Yisrael chatcho, if there's a doubt if it was an idolater who cut off the head, or if a Jew cut off the head, so mutter, then it's permitted. But vada Yisrael chatcho, but if it is certain that the Jew is the one that cut it off, so then also, so then it's prohibited. And so again, it's a question on Reish Lakish, Amai, why is it prohibited to have a kavodas kochavim shenishtabra meila? It should be like an Avodah Zara that broke on its own. And again, the Gemara answers, Hachanami kid Rava, here also, we can answer like Rava, that it's just a gezerah, that when a Jew is the one that breaks it, so then again, we are not going to say that it's nullified in case you have a situation where the Jew comes to own it. And the Gemara continues, Asa, we have a question, this is from a Mishnah coming up. Rabbi Yossi says, Af lo yirakos biyamos hageshamim, even not vegetables in the rainy season, mibnei shahanaviyah no sheres alein, because the leaves, they fall on them. Rashi explains, Aflo Yerakos Masnisin Katani, in the Mishnah it says, Zorin Tachtea Shal Asherah Yerakos Bimos HaGeshamim, you can plant under the Asherah tree, which is a tree for Avodah Zara, you can plant vegetables in the rainy season. Shatzel Kasha Lehen, because the shade is bad for them. V'chein Tzel Ilan Kasha Lehen, and the same is going to be true, the shade of the tree is bad for it. Vein Nena Mimena, so you're not getting any benefit from the Avodah Zara tree. Avalo Bimos HaChama, but you cannot do this in the summer season. Shatzel Yafel, and because then the shade is good. V'nimsa Nena Me Asherah, then it comes out he's getting benefit from the Asherah, Kol Asherah Ilan, who Asherahs are generally a tree. Rabbi Yossi Omer Af Lo Yerakos Bimos HaGeshamim Lefi Shanevaya No Sheres. Rabbi Yossi says even in the rainy season it's problematic to plant the vegetables under the tree because the leaves will fall al hayerakos on the vegetables. V'havel zevel, it's going to be like fertilizer. V'nimsa b'al hayerak nena min Asherah, it's going to come out that the owner of the yerek, he's going to get benefit from the Asherah, and that's why it's problematic. And so again, the Gemara asks on Reish Lakish, Amai, why should that be a problem? To have a kavodas kocham shenishtabra meileh. Here you have a situation where if the leaf is falling off the tree, it's like an Avodah Zarah breaking on its own, and it should be permitted. And the Gemara continues and answers, Shani Hasam, it's different over there. The ikar avodas kocham kayemis, because there the main Avodah Zarah is still maintained, meaning the tree itself has not been bottled, and therefore the leaf that falls from it is going to be prohibited. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Beis Amid Beis.